Before we get to bail, is Dominic Black not the thing we have to discuss before moving on?
I was going to do bail and then move to Dominic Black.
Okay. All right. So wait, before you even get to bail, I had a question. You sue the Independent first because they made a factually incorrect statement about him having shot 3 black individuals. Although they retracted, revised, still left it ambiguous, nominal damages, but no. You're going to run around suing. You'll have no shortage of lawyers willing to take the suits, get a retainer, crowdsource the lawsuit, but you're going to get nothing out of it. Does he just moves on? We'll get to his mother, I guess, in a second. But the bail, it was bail or bond? It was not bond. It was bail, correct?
Yeah, well, it's the same terms, same
2 million.
thing.
It was 2 million, correct?
Correct. I mean, not a bond in the sense that in Wisconsin it's cash bail.
Okay.
So in Wisconsin, every dollar bail you got to post. So it's not 10 cents on the dollar. So in this context, $2 million was posted. Now there's been some confusion out there. To his credit, Lynn Wood did raise that $2 million, and Lynn Wood did post it all through the Fight Back Foundation. So I was critical of Wood because of Pierce being involved in the case. Wasn't otherwise critical of Wood. The Wood did actually raise a lot of money for the kid, and did in fact post the $2 million bail. It wasn't Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell gave $50,000 that was part of that $2 million. Lindell at the time didn't quite take credit for it, by the way. I'm glad he's taking credit for it now, but at the time he was like, I was just giving money for election fortification cases. So, God bless him. But a lot of these people that are now hopping on the Kyle train have been invisible for the last year and a half. Dana Loesch is suddenly a big Kyle Rittenhouse supporter. Where was she when she was defending Black Rifle Coffee, throwing him under the bus? So I'm not going to forget where some of these people were. They needed to be there when Kyle needed him, not when they didn't need him. As Earl Long famously told a politician who came up to him and said, Earl, I only vote with you when you're right. And Earl said, son, I don't need you when I'm right. So there's wisdom there.
Beautiful.
So a lot of these sudden people, Nicholas Sandman, a lot of people suddenly discovered that Kyle is innocent and now can publicly talk about it. Yeah, you should have been there a little earlier, brother. But putting that aside, some of us were there from the get-go. Some of us predicted this outcome back 2 days after the incident, that Kyle would be acquitted of all charges because he was innocent and always innocent. But in this context, the bail was posted $2 million by Fight Back Foundation. It was done through John Pierce's law firm. John Pierce has now publicly, there was a period of time when unfortunately Johnny Boy was not being nice and was hinting that maybe he could get a piece of that money because he was the one who was the courier, if you will, who delivered it. And I was critical of him for that and kept being critical of him for that. And finally came to Jesus and discovered that he has no interest whatsoever in those funds and has publicly said it never was. He had no interest, but he at least now publicly has admitted, I'm not entitled to a penny of that. So what that leaves is a fight. Now, when your bail funds, while your trial is pending, in Wisconsin, there's this sort of tricky thing that happens legally. The bail funds belong to the defendant during the proceedings while it is functioning as bail. So, for example, if there's a criminal sentencing and there's fines issued, they can use the bail money to pay those fines and so forth. However, once the criminal case is terminated, the legal custody and ownership of those bail funds return to the people who raised the funds, who deposited the funds. So the $2 million is now shifted to the Fight Back Foundation. During the period of time I was representing Kyle, I had a very good settlement terms with the Fight Back Foundation to make sure a large portion of those funds, most of those funds, would go to Kyle and to all the things he needs, legal and security and otherwise. David Hancock turned down that offer because he wanted all the $2 million under his custody and control. And so and now that's where it stands. So legally, the Fight Back Foundation, if there's a legal fight, they'll win that. They'll have all that money come back to them. Lynn Wood may take the position that he doesn't trust those funds to actually be used for Kyle's benefit as long as David Hancock is attached to or associated with those funds. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Lynn come out and say, I'm happy to have every penny of that if the donors want it. Some of that money, the people who donated did donate it only for bail with the expectation it would be returned. That's why some of that money would need to be returned. But I think the foundation believed that they could get their donor, a lot of their donors, to say we want to supply this for the other defense of Kyle moving forward. He has security needs and legal needs on an ongoing basis, and just to be able to stay alive. Given, I mean, again, people were making death threats against him the day after the verdict, the day of the verdict. That he would do that if it's someone other than David Hancock that controls the funds. And so that wouldn't surprise me. But legally, Fight Back Foundation would be entitled to those funds, and they would get to determine where they go from there with some consultation with their donors. And I don't think it will ever go to David. It will never. Kyle won't see those funds as long as David Hancock would be the one in control or custody of them.
But the question is this then: if they get those funds back, who paid the legal fees? Have been paid from the second round of fundraising or crowdsourcing, and not from the initial?
Yeah. I helped raise over $600,000 that paid for all of that.
So overall, close to $3 million has been crowdsourced,
Over
raised.
$3 million, because there was, on top of the $2 million, Lynn Wood paid about $400,000 to John Pierce. I think it was 360 and change.
Wow.
That John Pierce hosed the kid for his extradition representation. So I still and I'm getting emails every other day from people that he purports to represent that are January 6th defendants. They're like, we've never seen the guy. We don't know if he's doing anything. So I still got my issues with John Pierce. That ain't gone away. But at least he's no longer a hurdle at all in Kyle's case. And at this point, the real hurdle is to those funds going to Kyle's benefit is actually David Hancock. As long as Kyle is, I mean, Mark Richards goes on CNN and says to the world that he told Kyle, you need to start saying no to some of these advisors. Well, there's only one. It's David Hancock. So unfortunately, like, I don't know if I would have appeared on Tucker right away after the verdict. I mean, there's a lot of things that I have no confidence that David Hancock is looking after the best interest of Kyle Rittenhouse. I have no doubt he's looking out for the best interest of David Hancock, and he's using his control over the kid and the family for his own self-aggrandizement and self-enrichment. And unfortunately, and so I can understand. I mean, I've obviously been very critical of Lynn Wood. In this context, I can understand his position that, he has no confidence in David Hancock. There's people that have taken out criminal warrants against him in South Carolina for purportedly stealing documents and information and other crimes. He's connected to other people that are a part of a massive criminal investigation in Puerto Rico, and that appears to be involving, fraudulent payments for COVID tests. He shows up in a lot of weird places. So so I can understand someone like Wood being, I'm not going to tell my donors to give the money to that guy who doesn't appear to have Kyle's best interest at heart.
Influences by Ariadna Jacob. Ariadna, I have not forgotten. I say this every time I bring up a chat from you. I have not forgotten. We had to cancel last week's sidebar because it would have been unfair to the guest to have a sidebar during the week of Rittenhouse trial. But how the F did Hancock get such a foothold on Kyle? Is he some sort of talent agent publicist? How did Hancock get his foot in the door and then get this, some will call it a foothold, others will call it a stranglehold? How did it happen?
So former Navy SEAL who ends up connected to a security team, and some of these security folks show up in interesting places. And some of the companies he's connected to have almost no footprint aside from doing highly classified work for federal government agencies. So, and then shows up in Puerto Rico right after the hurricane, trying to grift and hustle there, gets caught up in a bunch of criminal cases, apparently, at least his business partners were. Then he becomes security for Lynn Wood, helps drive Lynn Wood completely crazy, and Wood has his own suspicions about him. But while he's working for Wood, he recommends Wood raise money for Kyle, uses that to get the fundraising list for Kyle, and uses that to become the security guy for Kyle and the family. And very quickly, he ends up taking over all the security and all the money for a poor family. And that's how you get complete control. And that's what he's effectively done.
Okay.
And if people look out there and say, why is Kyle doing that? Why is he showing up here? Why is he doing? It's because David Hancock's running the show. The kid, the kid's not. Mark Richards said it on CNN. So it's not like I'm letting the cat out of the bag now. Mark Richards basically said the kid's under the control of this advisor. And it's extraordinary.
And he divulges that insider info to the arguably public enemy number one, who is not out for any justice for Kyle, not out for truth, is out to demonize Fox News, and they got their goods on Fox News now. So good for them. They got their headline story. Richards gave them the info, inside info, so they can go after Fox News now. So the $2 million they raised for the bail bond, whatever, no cash bond, so they had to raise the full 100%. In theory, goes back to the donors. The donors could say, we raised it for Kyle, give it to Kyle, but we want to make sure it goes to Kyle, not to Richards and whomever.
And especially not to Hancock. And I meant
Hancock. I didn't mean Richards.
Yeah.
I meant Hancock. Sorry.
And for and Richards will have no control now because the case is no longer a criminal case.
Okay.
So Hancock will be in complete 100% control. He even took over the spokesperson role. I had people emailing me saying, "Why is this little guy out there as the spokesperson for Kyle? This guy looks like an idiot." He is on the slower side of slow in certain public communications, but it's because he wants complete control. He doesn't want anybody else around but him. And he's going to monopolize that kid as much as he can. And he's going to monetize that kid for his own purposes as much as he can. It's unfortunate, but if you see Kyle making decisions you think are bad decisions, they're David Hancock's decisions. And so that's who to judge accordingly. And I do hope the kid gets some distance and separation from him, but that's up to him.
Well, it may or may not be up to him.
But he's 18 years old. You're asking a kid to do a lot.
Well,
you're asking him to reject the guy that provides security and then make sure his healthcare bills get paid. So that's the hard part for him.
And that's what I'm going to say. I'm an adult. I'm 42. I have, my mortgage is with the bank. I can go up and leave and find a new bank and go through the headache of finding a new bank to mortgage, bank, etc. Some point, it's like you'll deal with the current inconvenience, because to find a new potentially riskier inconvenience is a headache, and better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
The other problem is, if it's not done right, they create all kinds of tax problems, and that would not be good. You don't want the feds coming in on that and saying, "Oh, Kyle got the benefit of $2 million or $3 million, and that's actually technically income attributable to him. He now owes $1 million," and all of a sudden he faces IRS charges because there's no more politicized agency than that. Especially while the Biden administration wants to double the number of IRS agents out there. So I have no confidence in Hancock to manage that either. And it'd be like him to, do something that, is to Kyle's risk and his benefit. That's just the nature of the
guy. This is a joke one, but now I'm going to ask the question. What does a glowy mean? Why do people refer to spooks in the agent sense as glowies?
That I don't know. Glowies would be new to me as well.
Okay, I saw because people saying glowies, the agents glow. Well, now you've made me very nervous, because the idea of trying to find additional charges to go after Rittenhouse, a la Chauvin, totally different circumstances, but create tax problems so that therefore there are other issues to go after. All right, and by the way, it's Rittenhouse's decision, but the message has to reach Rittenhouse. So that's what the social medias and the aggregate knowledge and power of the internet are for.
Yeah, what he should know is, there's somebody asked, would I take a call? Of course I would take a call. That there's tons of people out there willing and ready and eager to help Kyle, and there's millions of Americans that have his back, and he doesn't have to depend on anyone else as the access point to the people that have his back. So that I just hope he knows that consistently and continuously and makes the best decisions. My own personal advice would have been to take a break from all this. I mean, the kid's been under massive pressure, ridiculous pressure, and the family just to escape it all for a little while. Take a little vacation. The kid deserves it. And then decide what you want to do with your life moving forward. But anybody thinks he's suddenly going to get rich is living in La La Land. And I don't think Nick Salmon, frankly, has his best interest at heart either. So, people are thinking that. I understand the kid's an icon, so I'm breaching more heresy by suggesting maybe not the best person to give advice under these circumstances.
All right. Before we do Dominic Black, do we do Wendy Rittenhouse? Any chance that she has for defamation in all of this? I mean,
she does. She does, because she doesn't have the same damages limitations. So the people said that she drove Kyle across state lines with the gun for these vigilante purposes. All false. There wasn't a single part of that was true. And so she clearly has defamation claims, libel claims herself. There's people who've made up wild statements about her all over the place, and she would have an easier claim for damages. So if you were to look at libel claims, she would be the one that would be best suited to bring it. Now, the question is, how many suits do you want to be involved in? How much discovery do you want to be stuck in? That's not always a fun ride. But, again, not only was Kyle a sweetheart, she was a very sweet, sweet person. So if I was a defendant and I was sued by by Wendy Rittenhouse, I would be worried about a jury, because they're going to see her against Joe Scarborough. It ain't Joe Scarborough that's going to look good. So
But I mean,
I think she would have robust claims. And then it's just what's in her own best interest. What does she want to do? What matters most to her? I think a lot of people are circling these folks wanting, where I agree with Richards. I disagreed with that. What's what Matt Gaetz was doing. Matt Gaetz was making it clear, I'm going to publicly protect your reputation and give you an internship if you want it. He was not trying to capital. That provides no money to Matt Gaetz or Thomas Massey. Amanda Milius said, hey, if Kyle wants to, join and figure out a film crew, she can, I got a job for you. They're all good-hearted people who want to protect the kid and give him a financial future and a public future and a reputational future. On the other hand, some of these other people, like the David Hancocks and some others, do want to just monetize them for their own gain. And some other people want to politicize them for their own gain. And they should be making decisions that are in their own best interest, not everybody else making decisions for them. They're almost like, a 14-year-old Britney Spears, where everybody's looking at all the money that could be coming or all the power that could come in through that person and focused on themselves rather than focused on what's good for them. So I hope they get better advisors, in my view, that care mostly about them, not about self-aggrandizement or self-empowerment or self-enrichment.
And actually, some people in the chat were saying, Rittenhouse with Hancock sounds like a Britney Spears. There's some definite analogies to be drawn there. And then before I bring this one up, the question I had just for Wendy is, defamation, she might have an easier claim, but then what are going to be her damages quantifiably?
That's going to be limited. But if you bring it to the right place and they see what she went through emotionally, and this is somebody who used to work 80 hours a week. I mean, this is a working class person who works for a living, who had to live in hiding with her 2 daughters and her son for the last year and a half, in part because of those lies. That could be a very big verdict. So
And
she might have robust claims if she wants to go that path.
And I also imagine she would have more by way of emotional damages than by military,
because there's no criminal charge against her. That was always false, totally false. They can't even pretend that it has an aspect of truth to it. Nothing about it was true. The lies about her.
No, and I still say, like, encouraging anyone to sue, you're buying into a years of stress. But now this is Glowies is an old 4chan meme that spread after Trump was elected. The original meme was, quote, glow in the dark CIA. Anyways, I don't know, how does that even fit in? But since people become more aware of the deep state, it's expanded to Glowies. So I don't know anything about this, so don't hold it against me, people. Water jabbers, but thank you for the info.
Yeah, I don't read 4chan. God bless the autist on 4chan, but there's a lot of crap. I see
screenshots. I don't have an account on 4chan. So, okay, fine. Wendy, Kyle, we've done DO, we've done federal charges, we've done defamation, we've done the bail.
Dominic
Black, Robert.
So I think his lawyer has brought a motion to dismiss before, but he should obviously renew it now.
Too fast. Who is Dominic Black in all of this for anybody who has not been following as closely as we have? Dominic Black, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, is the individual accused of having purchased, procured, and supplied the allegedly unlawful firearm to Kyle, which resulted in death. So he has now been charged with, what's he been charged with?
2 felonies of just doing that. So of loaning a gun, loaning a dangerous weapon to someone, and that weapon was used, resulting in death. And the hardest part, the biggest risk for Black was it didn't require proving intentional homicide or criminal death. Just that it resulted in death or injury subjected him to 12 years in Wisconsin State Prison.
So, okay, I mean, this is the mind-blowing thing. These are state charges again, so not federal, and it's state law says unlawfully providing a firearm to an underage, or does it matter how old the individual is?
Selling, giving, or loaning a dangerous weapon under the same statute that Kyle was charged with. And so the problem for the state is they made a choice not to cut a plea deal with Black because they thought it would make him look bad in front of the jury. Now they're at risk. How does a judge not dismiss those charges? Because the same exception that applies to Kyle, which says it's not a dangerous weapon under the law if it's a rifle or shotgun owned by a 16 or 17-year-old. And that is, unless it's a short-barreled rifle. That's the case. That's why it was dismissed against Kyle. That means it's also not a crime to loan it, give it, or sell it to such an individual under state law. There's different federal laws that apply, but they don't apply here to Black because it wasn't a straw man purchase. And so under federal law. So his only risk was this state law that now the court has found as a matter of law is not a crime. And so what should happen, unless the court wants to make a contradictory ruling, Dominic Black's, all of the charges against Dominic Black should be dismissed with prejudice because Dominic Black didn't commit a crime either, because all he did was, accusing, according to the state, because he disputes this, was loan a gun to someone who lawfully could possess that precise gun under Wisconsin law. It's not considered a crime to possess a rifle or shotgun in Wisconsin. Thus, it is also not a crime to loan it, give it, or sell it to someone in Wisconsin.
Someone says it looks like a smiling skull over my shoulder. I guess they mean this. Okay, I hope. Okay, so to make sure I understand then. Well, the charges against Rittenhouse were dismissed, or they were, sorry, the judge dismissed them. Basically, the state, the prosecutor effectively withdrew the unlawful possession charges against Rittenhouse, which would then, in theory, make Black not guilty of having done anything for which he was charged in the first place. If I oversimplify it for me.
No, that's it. I mean, they charged him with something that wasn't a crime, didn't cut a plea deal with him to put maximum pressure on him to testify in a certain way at trial, and it turned out he never should have been prosecuted with a crime, and the charges against him should be dismissed with prejudice under the law.
And you said it was not a straw man, but you said a what type of sale, which is like sort of a French we say
federal law prohibits certain straw man purchases, but they didn't transfer the gun to him from legal possession purposes under federal law. So he's not at risk under federal law, as I understand it. And in terms of the Wisconsin law, it's not considered criminal for a 17-year-old to have a rifle or shotgun.
And he was facing, I mean, in theory, the charges should get dismissed ASAP, and then Dominic will be free to go as well. Charge against Dominic was lending a gun to a minor that killed someone. Kyle lawfully killed someone, so he didn't commit a crime.
Right. But it's only, but there's the same exception applies to the crime charged against Dominic Black that applies to Kyle, which is it's not considered a crime for a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old to have a shotgun or a rifle that's not a short-barreled rifle in Wisconsin, period. Okay. So, end of story.
All right, by the way, and I noticed someone earlier said La Chaufferie, which is, this is not an ad. There is nothing purchased. It's family. My brother-in-law is a shareholder in La Chaufferie, which is a Quebec gin made out of Granby. They actually have a nice in-bar terrace. And Chaufferie means the boiler room because the gin is made out of the old boiler room of Imperial Tobacco. Quite a beautiful history. Delicious gin, but not an ad. So just in case anyone's wondering, I wore the black shirt because when the mic is not visible, my camera does not focus on the mic, so my face stays in focus better. So it was a strategic decision. Okay, good. So Dominic Black, if you're betting Dominic Black is walking free within the next 2 weeks?
It should happen. So we'll see. I mean, unless a court tries to contradict that ruling and let the issue drag on, but it should be fully dismissed with prejudice. End of story.
Good. What else are we missing? Robert, is Binger going to face any prosecutorial misconduct? People want Binger to face sanctions, or Krause. Are they? Will they? What are the chances? Can it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at different ways to crowdsource an effort to have a sophisticated petition supported by and signed by many people to go to the Office of Lawyer Regulation for an investigation into suspending or disbarring Binger, which I think would be an appropriate remedy under these circumstances. So that's still in progress. Normally, a corrupt prosecutor faces no consequences. We will try to make that a different outcome here.
Now, I said I don't like the idea of petitioning, to get someone disbarred. I don't know what it requires to get the attention of the Bar Association.
Well, here's the Office of Lawyer Regulation. Director Keith Saline. I've known him for a long time, done battle with him for a long time. He's been more than eager to go after controversial defendants, defense lawyers, family lawyers, small-time lawyers. It's time he proved that the laws in Wisconsin and the ethical rules in Wisconsin apply to the prosecutors just as much as they apply to everyone else. And we'll find out. I'm going to go through in detail all the different ethical rules he breached and then show that there's substantial public support by crowdsourcing support for the petition. So he knows that there's a lot of people paying attention to it. And we'll see. He gets to either prove me right that the Office of Lawyer Regulation continues to fail to hold the powerful accountable, or he can prove me wrong by showing that he does in fact value what he has always said he values, which is equal application of the rules to all in the legal profession. We will find out.
Now, before we get into whether or not Gage Groskraut can be prosecuted, I don't know if we've talked about it here or where, Robert. Can Binger be prosecuted for pointing the firearm at the jury?
I mean, it technically is a crime. So, but it's his own office that would determine the prosecution.
It's his own DA who determines whether or not to prosecute, the ADA.